History doesn't whisper. It bleeds. And when you listen closely, you'll hear the stories they tried to bury. The stories of a land taken, a people betrayed, and a past that still echoes beneath our feet. This is the untold truth of how America was taken. Episode by episode. Episode 8. After months of starvation, raids, and relentless pressure, one thing became clearer than ever. The English settlers could not be trusted. Episode 7 showed how the colonists used hunger as a weapon. Episode 8 shows something even more destructive. The birth of the broken treaty system that would define the next 300 years of American history. It started small, with words. The settlers approached Powhatan villages carrying white flags and promises of peace. They spoke of friendship, brotherhood, and shared land. They offered gifts, glass beads, iron tools, cloth, and promised that if the native people stopped resisting, the violence would end. But every gift carried poison. Every promise hit a goal. Every treaty was written with an invisible footnote. Until we want more. The first treaty seemed simple. The Powhatan would allow the English to plant crops near their settlements in exchange for peace. But the settlers expanded far beyond the agreed area. They built forts, fences, and farms on land that was never part of the agreement. When confronted, the colonists denied everything or claimed misunderstanding. Lies became their language. Greed became their compass. The native leaders, confused and frustrated, tried again. Another treaty was made. The English would stay inside certain boundaries and stop raiding native storehouses. For a moment, there was hope. Hunting paths reopened. Villages began rebuilding their burned homes. Mothers searched for firewood without fear of gunfire in the distance. But the peace lasted only days. A group of settlers began clearing land far beyond the treaty line, chopping down trees and building new fields. When asked why, they simply said, "This land belongs to us now." And just like that, the treaty meant nothing. The tribes began to see a pattern, one that would repeat across the entire continent. The English made promises only when they were weak, and they broke them the moment they became strong. But the breaking of treaties wasn't always done with deception alone. Sometimes it was done with force. In one recorded incident, tribal leaders arrived at a colonial fort for a peace meeting. They came unarmed. They brought gifts. They expected negotiation. Instead, the settlers locked the gates. They drew their weapons. They accused the chiefs of plotting rebellion and slaughtered them inside the fort's walls. The colonial governor later justified it, calling it necessary. But for the tribes who lost their leaders that day, it wasn't just murder. It was proof. Proof that the English would use peace talks as traps. After this betrayal, one Powhatan elder said words that would echo through generations. The English smile with their mouths and lie with their hands. As spring returned and new crops grew, the settlers grew confident. They believed the native nations were weakened beyond recovery. They believed hunger had broken their spirit and that fear had killed their courage. But the settlers were wrong. Something was changing quietly within the Powhatan Confederacy. Messengers traveled from village to village carrying news of the broken treaties, the murdered leaders, the stolen lands. These stories weren't told with fear anymore. They were told with resolve. For the first time in years, the tribes began discussing something unthinkable. A united strike. A coordinated uprising, a counterattack big enough to shake every English settlement in Virginia. Meetings were held at night, deep in the forest where the trees muffled every word. Warriors sharpened their weapons. Leaders planned new strategies, not just to survive, but to fight back. The settlers believed their lies would keep the tribes divided, but instead, their betrayal united them. Broken promises didn't break the native spirit. They ignited it. And that fire would soon explode into one of the most shocking coordinated attacks in early American history. The settlers thought the war was fading, but Episode 9 will reveal the moment they realized it was only beginning.